I think from a adoption standpoint, sometimes it's a very hard to go against the culture. So you have to find the right entrepreneurial, forward, progressive leaders, especially at the VP, C-suite level within the carrier, who has to, sort of back this up. Number one. Number two, involving the customer, right? Involving the insured is critical. And finally, the economics, because that's where the value comes in. And you can say that, listen, I'm going to try this out. If it works, here's why we could scale it, right? Because that's the big thing at the end of it. You want to operationalize what you're going to prove. Otherwise, it just becomes an experiment. And I think in this day and age, there are some companies that do a lot of experiments, but not everybody wants to just sort of know that we're going to do this experiment, burn the money, and be done with it, right? It's just, even though I end up doing that, but they won't sign off and start off, on that lens. So that's sort of how we've seen sort of this whole, this tussle between new ideas coming up out there from a technology world and sort of their receptivity. But we're seeing more and more. I mean, I want to say this at the end of this segment, that we're seeing a little bit more of the carriers being open about this realization that they need true innovation leaders inside the company, right? And the profile of that innovation leader to me looks like a startup founder, if you ask me. Someone who's willing to take the risks, be okay if nothing comes out of it, and start from the ground up in terms of what that product needs to be, or what the customer uh, pain points are that need to be solved, right? Before they start applying the sort of the company specific, let's do it this way or that way. So anyway, I'm very passionate about this topic. So I know we kind of kept going on, but again, a great segue into what I think I wanted to just talk a little bit about, sort of the future and the opportunity, especially when it comes to home insurance and insurance in general, right? On the consumer side, on the personal line side, maybe on the commercial line sides too. What does that look like? Uh, which and maybe touch upon sort of the the power of IoT and AI and ML and all these buzzwords. How does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, so I mentioned a paradigm shift before. I would add a parallel concept here, which I think it almost takes a leap of faith. And I know you kind of mentioned numbers and metrics and ROI. Those things are important, so I don't want to diminish that. But you know, I have a good feeling that a lot of carriers out there are going to save more on printing costs this year from having all their employees work remote than they would have spent on some of these pilots or whatnot, right? So the type of money that we're talking about to really refine the value prop and to push this forward, I think is a trivial amount for most carriers at the end of the day. And so you almost have to have this fundamental belief that yes, IoT is going to revolutionize the way that we do insurance. And I don't know the timing. I don't know if that's a 2-year timeline, 5-year timeline, 10-year timeline. But it is going to happen. It is fundamentally different. And I'm going to have a much, much deeper, 10x, 100x, 1,000 times, that a million X potentially, more information about my risks and exposures than I have today, right? And it allows me to work directly with my consumer in a way that I may not have access to that kind of level of insight today because I may be working through an agent or broker. And so I think it's really compelling, even for again, agents and brokers, both on the personal line side, on the commercial side. I do think, commercial holds a lot of potential here because there's just more at stake, right? If you've got, apartment buildings, right? Manufacturing plants, other things, right? There's just a lot more at stake when you have that water leak, right? It's not just your apartment or your home, right? But now it's, multi-tenant, right? Or you have to shut down operations or things like that. So, you have a higher exposure to these types of events. So they warrant a higher investment. So I feel like you have to just fundamentally believe like this is going to change the world fundamentally. And I think about some of the entrepreneurs that you mentioned, right? And Elon Musk, right? I mean, sometimes the guy seems really, really crazy, right? And he's been talking about this stuff since like the late 1990s. And it's only now that we kind of look at Tesla and we're saying they're not just a niche player anymore. I mean, they're directly competing against Ford's, GMs, right? I've seen this so many more Teslas on the road in the last year or two, where, when you somebody had a Tesla, it was kind of this novel thing. Now they're not novel at all. I feel like I see them on the road all the time, right? Same with SpaceX, right? And their successful launch of NASA astronauts. So, in some ways you have to believe, right? And it's taken Elon Musk a 20-year journey to get to this voice, but he never wavered in that faith. Same with Jeff Bezos and Amazon, right? From the mid 1990s to now. So, this is not an overnight success. You're not going to get your return in a single year. And so I think that's the key here, is you got to be playing the long game. I read a book recently, and I'm forgetting which one it was, but it gave me a great framework to think about these type of issues. And it's called the 10-week, 10-month, 10-year rule. So the types of decisions that you're agonizing over the next 10 weeks, if you look from 10 years from now, they're going to seem really trivial, right? And then vice versa. So we tend to, unfortunately, favor the short term over the long term. And so, does it make sense to do in the next 10 weeks? Of course not, right? 10 months, maybe, right? 10 years, absolutely. And so, you're not going to get there 10 years from now without starting somewhere. So, I think you just have to start with that belief that IoT is going to change the world. It already has in many ways, but it's going to change the insurance world, and then go from there. And however long it takes you to get there, I'm not saying unlimited time, unlimited money, but that's really what it takes, is that level of commitment. And before I throw it back over to you, Pankaj, like the type of personality that you kind of mentioned, that's actually rare at insurance companies, right? There's so much consensus. By their nature, insurance companies are risk adverse, and so I've been proud with a lot of companies have really gone out with innovation teams, innovation labs, have taken some risks. But I do feel like fortune favors the bold in this space, and my question is, who among us is the bold one to be that leader? Sometimes I talk about in my keynote speeches, what if there was a competitor that adopted every brand new technology, was on the cutting edge of everything, rather than looking to be the fast follower or waiting, until somebody else is successful with it. I think that would be a very formidable competitor if there was somebody that took the bull by the horns on all of these major value propositions and just kind of took it as an article of faith that it will happen, and they want to be the ones to figure it out. I think that's a lasting competitive advantage, versus if I look at some of the companies today, even companies like Lemonade that have had major successful IPOs. At its core, I don't know that it's fundamentally different than another renters or homeowners company. Yes, they started offering pet insurance, but I don't see that it's radically different than other carriers out there. Obviously, great marketing, right? Great customer experience, things like that. So I'm really looking for novelty, right? Novelty to me conveys lasting competitive edge, and so that's where I've been surprised that there hasn't been more movement in this segment yet.
Yeah, no, I think that's really a very holistic answer. I think that some of the things that come to my mind, when I think about IoT and Internet of Things. I mean, in some ways, if you look at whether we look at Amazon or whether we look at Google, I mean, these companies became what they were because of people like us who were using our laptop computers, our mobile phones, both of which are IoT devices because they're capturing data that we are inputting into the machines. They just did a great job of figuring out, based on the work we were doing, based on the data that we were inputting into the system. They were making inferences on and obviously monetizing their data in many different ways, right? So they've been doing it for a long time. And I think when I think of IoT and I think of sensors and the opportunity, that's how it feels to me. I mean, I think it's said that the devices adoption is, I don't know what it is, supposed to be 72 billion by 2025 or something like that. Is growing at the rate of 20 to 30%. That ship has sailed, right? People are buying these gadgets. Every gadget, everything can be internet enabled. And if it's internet enabled, it is sending data. If they're sending data, then somebody can take that data. Now, you don't have to take the raw data. You gotta pick that data in. You gotta massage it. You gotta figure out what is the use case that I want to use this data for, and then apply it, right? Which is where we saw the opportunity that the raw data from an IoT. A lot of carriers ask me, I don't think the raw data makes any sense for any carrier to pick up. simply the raw data. What they're looking for is, what does this data tell us about assessing the risk of this insured? What does it tell us about managing the risk for this insured? And now, because of these technologies, I think there's a completely different way to look at them, right? So the example that you mentioned earlier in our conversation about the age of the building when it was built, the data over the last 30 years in terms of people of similar demographic, what loss histories we've had, and you have this pool. Well, all of that goes, I'm not saying throughout the door today, but if you can get data about me as an insured in real time, which is contextual, with all the other data elements that are out there, that's super powerful because it's customized, right? The whole power of B2C business model is, can you customize or can you personalize to an extent that, like, whatever is that product, it becomes really, has a unique proposition for me as a consumer. And that's what insurance, I think, has that potential to present, right? A product, a policy which I need looks different than what you might need, and therefore is priced differently. And with the risk management aspect, right, which is huge when it comes to commercial lines, right? Again, because of the fact that I could now know what could happen to you, I could have the setup in place to intervene and sort of minimize the damage, which again everybody benefits. So obviously from a risk management perspective, the potential of IoT within commercial space is huge. So I really think that, I mean, I believe I don't know if it's going to take 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years. I thought it was going to take less than 1 year. Believe me, when I started in 2018, I thought it's going to be, and this is no brainer. People should take it up right away. But as we know, things happen more slowly. So I do think it'll take a while because the insurance industry has a big option, which is status quo, which is not do anything or do what is a little bit more, a priority to them. But this is coming. You mentioned, right, a day will come when one of the, maybe an insure tech or a digital NGA or someone is going to come in and say, let me take advantage of all the new technologies. I'm starting up from ground up. Let me deliver an experience which is what the consumers want, both before, during, and after the purchase. And it might not even be a product. It might be a service. It might be a monthly service that those guys are ready to sign, because we know consumers love signing up for product as a service, right? So the subscription model is here. Amazon Prime has made that so popular that think of it that way, right? Amazon Prime type subscription pricing that covers some of these devices, and in case the devices don't work, the coverage kicks in, right? If the damage should occur, and all that is covered by that subscription pricing. So I do think I'm quite bullish that that day will come. Hopefully it comes sooner rather than later. But in post-COVID world, where everything, I think everybody has understood the importance of being digitally connected, being, prevention is better than cure, right? So if you put all those mega trends together, IoT and, the promise that it has for this industry is huge. So question is, are there any converters out there, any listeners who feel like, what, this is something worth taking a chance and trying to see what are the possibilities, right? I think that's what we're talking about. There are a lot of possibilities. Are you willing to, when are you willing to step in and try those out? So yeah, that's where I think this could go. And but time will tell, as you know, with everything. So that actually brings us to an end. Rob, what would you say?
Yeah, great thoughts, Pankaj. And it's funny, you mentioned launching in 2018, and I remember, being very, very excited for you. But I remember in the back of my mind, I'd kind of, one of my concerns was, oh, is he too late to the game? So that's clearly not been a problem for you. I think some of your vision in terms of being device agnostic, right, and really the intelligence. And like you said, I think everyone's used to looking at that accord form, looking at those loss rounds, looking at that Excel spreadsheet or other things. And so we're used to structured data, we're used to fielded data um, as underwriters, as claims professionals. And so, yeah, you're right. Like the data streaming off these sensors doesn't make any sense. Just if you read the GPS off of your phone, it would make any sense to you. But that's why we have AI, right? Is to kind of make sense of it, show the patterns, and to distill it, right, in the user interface that shows you, right, this is the optimal route. Here's two optional routes that you could go instead, right? And you know, I talk in my speeches about it's a beautiful user interface. You wouldn't necessarily call, you know, Apple Maps or Google Maps beautiful, right? But it is. It's actually a tremendous testament to the simplifying power of some of these technologies to make the complex simple. And so that's really what you've been able to do at Purple Ant. So I agree with you. I think too on COVID, how do you perform a loss control visit, right? How do you you know, get a sense for particular risk, right? How are you monitoring things like, you know, it's all just enhances the already what I felt was kind of a compelling use case to kind of explore in this place. So I totally understand, right, for each carrier, for each, you know, agency and broker for their clients, right? Different programs are going to make sense, different sense for each one. I don't think it's a one size fits all, but the beauty, right, is that the hardware part of it is the easy part, right? It's the software part, the making sense of it and designing a program, a risk management program, to your point, that's really fundamentally about prevention first, gaining insights, and then, you know, at worst, right, helping to triage the claim, hopefully, you know, reducing severity, et cetera. And I just think, you know, it's kind of a parting thought. You know, we know that when customers have a claim, that's the moment of truth for you know, both agents and carriers. And when they have a good claims experience, you've just gained a customer for life. You know, those people typically don't leave you after that experience. So imagine the power of that good claims experience, and how much better it would be if you prevented their claim from happening in the first place, right? Like that would be the ultimate, right? So I do think people need to think about it along multi-dimensional lines, right? Not just dollars and cents. What am I going to pay back in terms of, you know, the lost dollars themselves, but all aspects of it, right? Including both, yes, loss avoidance, but also, you know, increased customer retention, loyalty, word of mouth, you know, better pricing, et cetera. The whole gamut. Again, it's a fundamental paradigm shift for insurance. So I don't think you can look at one aspect in isolation and just evaluate it.
Cool, cool. I agree. I agree. So, well, with that, I know we've come, we probably should wrap this one up, but for anybody listening, we do have a white paper that we're publishing, which has a lot more of this in written form, and will be published very soon. And if you would like that, hit us up, and we'll send you a copy of that white paper. With that, thank you, Rob. This was awesome.
Absolutely, Prakash. Great to connect with you. Can you tell people how to find you and how to find more out about Purple Ant?
Absolutely. I love for people to just go up to our website, which is www.purple-ant.com or www.purpleantinc.com. You'll find us there. We'll have a link to the white paper on our homepage, so you can hit that and be able to access the entire white paper.
Fantastic. Well, wish you phenomenal success moving forward, Prakash. Congrats on what you've been able to achieve to date. Always great to catch up, and thanks for being part of this Insurance Nerds conversation.
Thank you. Same here, Rob. Good luck for all the best for your future success as well. And let's stay in touch. It feels like yesterday we had that chat, but hopefully 2 years from now, we'll say, hey, finally, the time is here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks for watching.